There's only 3 things you need to learn in order to draw a perfect eye every single time. So in this video, I'll be going over the cumulative knowledge that I've learned from the Chinese art gods themselves, from the secret Chinese YouTube, giving you a completely new perspective on how to draw the eyes. So by the end of this video, I guarantee that you'll finally be able to confidently draw the eyes. This first concept is one that no one talks about here, and yet it is one of the most important guidelines to help you draw the eyes. So important that it defines a character's perceived mood, personality, and their looks. And yet, I've never seen an eye tutorial on YouTube mention this before. Let's see, can you spot what it is? It's something that all of these eyes have in common, and is incorporated in the vast majority of eyes drawn by professional artists. And this is canthal tilt. You'll hear this a lot in regards to facial attractiveness, but what is it? Canthal tilt is essentially the angle or slant of the eyes, measured from the outer corners of the eye. Positive canthal tilt generally makes your character look more fierce and alert, and you'll see that the vast majority of eyes are drawn with positive canthal tilt. Meanwhile, negative canthal tilt gives your character a more tired and sad expression, which is perfect if that's what you're aiming for. But for the most part, try and aim to give your character a positive canthal tilt. So don't draw eyes like this, draw them like this. There's so many tutorials on YouTube using this type of guideline without actually knowing or explaining the underlying concept behind it. This is why people use parallelograms instead of almonds. It is purely because of the fact that it incorporates a positive canthal tilt. This is the simple reason why this eye looks better than this eye. And importantly, this structural guideline works for basically all angles of the face. If we draw from this angle here, we are still able to keep in mind this concept behind our eye drawings. Now that we have that guideline down, we need to know the fundamentals behind getting the actual shape of the eye correct. And for this, we need to remember that the eyeball is simply one big sphere. This is extremely important to constantly keep in mind, and this is what defines the shape of the upper and lower eyelids. The eyelids simply follow the curvature of the sphere. Not only that, this defines how we should shade the entire eye as well, since we can think of it as a light interacting with a sphere. If we want to draw from the frontal perspective, then we can essentially just think of the eye as a parallelogram with more curves. For semi-realistic eyes, the general thing to note is that the bottom of the eye has this type of shape to it, where it is slightly curved downwards and then curved upwards. And then we can draw the top as one big, slightly slanted curve. Meanwhile, for anime eyes, you can basically just do whatever the hell you want. And for semi-realistic eyes, some important features of the eyes to include are the tear duct and this corner bit of the eyes. This will really help you make the eyes look much more realistic. After we get the shape of the eye right, then there's only 2 more crucial components that we need to get right. The next of which is the eyelashes. Now, here's a game changer tip that I learned for drawing eyes from the Chinese YouTube, but that I've somehow never heard on YouTube before. And to learn what this is, let's see if you can identify the problem with the eyelashes on this eye here. It obviously looks weird, but what's the problem? The problem is that it looks like I'm painting hairs, but what I should actually be doing is painting grass. Yeah, it's the opposite of what you would expect, isn't it? Given that the eyelashes are hairs. But this is precisely the trap that the majority of beginner artists fall into, trying to paint the eyelashes as hairs instead of well-defined shapes and clumps. Grass has this type of shape and this type of thickness and taper to it. Something like this doesn't look like grass and thus looks kind of off. So to fix this eye, I basically removed some loose hair strands and gave more volume to some of the hair strands. And look at how much better the eye looks after making the eyelashes look more like grass. Now, obviously, this is just a general guideline, and there's exceptions for other art styles. but you really can't go wrong if you just try and draw the eyelashes like grass. And for the bottom eyelashes, we can follow the same principle as well, except that the eyelashes should be much shorter, and thus they are a bit more squashed. Additionally, the eyelashes act as one of the key defining characteristics that separates female and male eyes. In general, female eyelashes will be more upturned and longer, meanwhile male eyelashes will be the opposite of that. And sometimes for males, we can forgo the appearance of individual eyelashes altogether by drawing the eyelashes as one big shape. In order to properly understand the last piece of the eye that ties everything together, we should first quickly learn about the other components of the eye that I haven't mentioned yet, which we can learn from this great video about the anatomy surrounding the eye, found on today's sponsor, Skillshare. Before we get to this course, for those that don't already know, Skillshare is perfect for any artists that are serious about leveling up the art game. And not just their art game, Skillshare is full of thousands of courses ranging from business to life skills to productivity and much more, all taught by professionals in their industry. And this course about drawing the eye went over the important bones and muscle groups surrounding the eye, which will affect the way in which we shade the surrounding areas of the eye, and is an important component that is often overlooked. And guess what? The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So why not give it a try? The only remaining hard part is getting the iris right. Yeah, that's it. It was such a revelation for me when I learned that the eyes can simply be broken down into these 3 components, which makes it feel so much less overwhelming. So, how to draw the irises correctly? Well, there's a very simple guideline for that, and yet it makes a huge difference to the appearance and mood of the eyes. The iris can oftentimes make or break the appearance of an eye, and drawing it wrong will just make your eye look really weird. When drawing irises, one of the main guidelines we need to pay attention to is the scleral show. This is the amount of whites of the eye that is present under the iris. Ideally, we want to draw the iris or the under eyes such that there is no scleral show. This is because the appearance of scleral show can give the eyes a bit of a droopy look. But of course, if you're aiming for that type of look, well, then now you know what to do. So this is another very important guideline that, once again, I've somehow never heard any tutorials talk about before. Now that we understand how to fit the bottom part of the iris, how do we fit the top part? Well, this can vary a lot, but in general, aim for between half to 1/5 of the top part of the iris covered. And in general, try to make sure there's no whites above the iris showing. It'll give the eyes a creepy and crazy feel. Now, how do we position the iris if the character is looking off in a direction? We can draw this by first just drawing the pupils based on where the character is looking, making sure that they are correctly aligned, which we can check by drawing a line through the corners of the eye and through the pupils. Drawing just the pupils first is good because it acts as a foundation for us to fill in the iris relative to the pupil's position. Apart from that, we can shade the iris depending on the style that we're going for. But in general, it's good to make the edges of the iris darker. And then we add highlights in order to give the eyes a pop. It's important to make sure that these highlights are sharp and hard. Otherwise, it will look a bit muddy. And in order to give the iris a glossy look, most artists like to add a glow to the bottom part of the iris. We also shade the rest of the eyeball here, keeping in mind that, again, the eye is simply a sphere, with some parts covered by the flaps of the skin. The only thing you need to be able to draw a good-looking eye is to get the shape, iris, and eyelashes of the eyes correct. That's it. It's as simple as that. Break it down in terms of these 3 components the next time you draw an eye, and you'll be able to feel just how much easier it is. If you learned something from this video, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Anyways, thanks for watching.